Hey, Addi here. You got me solo today. I am going to be breaking down some ADP. Going to be a quick show, but a lot of info. Hope you guys enjoy it. We're getting into some real nerd shit today, so hope it's a fun time for everyone involved. Let's hit this intro. Hey, how you guys doing? I am one guy. This is two pods. No, two guys, one pod. I am Eddie the Nard Dugnar, the Duck League champ. You can find me on all the socials at that. I am also the creator of League Champ, so be sure to check us out. We're running contests all through the off season, but I am here to talk about something that I have shared to a lot of the people that I'm sure will watch this in our Discords. I put together some analysis on early season ADP. We had about 10 mock drafts going, so I figured why not get some analysis in there? We're going to be going over the spreadsheet today. So if you don't like watching a dude in a beanie break down a spreadsheet, this isn't the show for you, but I sure hope it is because this will be fun. We're going to go over some real fun data. I have a lot of cool insights from this, and let's get into it. We run Superflex mock drafts. These are dynasty formatted, so when we're going through this, just keep that in context in mind. This is your Superflex dynasty rankings, essentially. So this gives you a good indication of how guys are getting ranked early in the startup space because people are going to start drafting real soon. So let's break into it. Alrighty. So I got this pulled up. We're going to be looking through this ADP, and let's get into it. So this is my ADP sheet. I have shared this in the actual comments, so you can see where I am actually getting this data from. It is fully accessible. I have this as a public Google Doc, so feel free to take a look at it. I'll be updating it throughout the offseason. I think this data is really impactful, can be pretty useful, but I'll start by sorting it the right way. So, sorted by average pick, we have the average round of a player. I'm just going to go through a baseline data analysis of this. We have average round, maximum round, minimum round, standard deviation of that round. That's a variance that the player goes in depending on the round. Same with pick, average max min of pick, standard deviation of that pick. I think the standard dev of that pick is one of the most useful things we can cover today. And then last, but certainly not least, is the average positional rank. And when we're talking positional rank here, we're talking about wide receiver, running back, tight end, and quarterback. And how they are stacking up in terms of where they are picked in a draft board in terms of ranking. Obviously, we have a lot of this data on League Champ, but I want to make sure that we are putting it into an accessible format. And I know people love Google Sheets, so let's start getting into it. So the baseline of this draft board is pretty standard. You know, we have the Joe Burrows, the Josh Allen's, Drake Mays, Jamar Chase, Bijan's. The top of this board, they tend to go in your first round. It can't be much of a surprise there. And I don't really want to go over the first round today. So the main thing that I want to go over is actually what we get in terms of variance in the players that we are picking. And let's start by sorting it that way. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of and sort this by standard deviation. Now, whenever standard deviation is null, a good thing to note is that essentially means that the player was only picked in one of those 10 drafts, so they don't have any deviation because they've only been picked once. But we can still work around that. And we're going to look at the guys that actually have the most variance between the spots that they are getting picked. And when we look at min pick versus max pick, minimum pick is the earliest that they got drafted in any of our Superflex mocks, and the maximum pick is the maximum that they got drafted in any of those Superflex drafts. And the guys on here are Braylon Allen, Kenny Gainwell, Romeo Dobbs, all of these guys. So we're going to break it down position by position. Let's go ahead and start it at the quarterback position. So We're going to ignore some of the nulls. Obviously, Mendoza, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Chambliss, Howard, Brissett, and Simpson Fields are picked in only one of our drafts. I think they're interesting, but I don't think that gives us a lot of data to go off of. I'm sure that won't be null in the near future. So as we do more of these mocks, if you want them included, just hit me with a link to your Sleeper mock. Sleeper is one of the best apps out there. They actually let that data be pretty publicly accessible. But let's break down the highest variance quarterbacks. So we're starting with Malik Willis. Now, he was stellar at the end of the season for the Green Bay Packers. And he essentially went out there, made a ton of plays, and should earn himself a starting role. Now, if we're talking where that is, that could be a place as bad as the Jets, but it could be a place as nice as the Miami Dolphins. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of variation. Now, he can go anywhere between 32 picks of his maximum. He's going around pick 100 in a Superflex draft, but he's gone as low as 165 and as high as 89. That shows that you can probably expect that there is a Malik Willis guy in your league and that he might be going earlier than you are expecting. So you might want to take him a little bit earlier there. So let's look at some of the other metrics around him. He went as high as the 8th round and as low as the 14th. He's going around the 9-6 spot. So that means you're getting him around pick 108-ish. That's a very interesting spot because you have a lot of stellar players there. So you're taking a chance on Malik Willis and hoping that he gets a starting role. I'm not sure if I buy in that much, but we've seen a ton of great development with him in that Matt LaFleur system in Green Bay. And I can speak from experience. I watched him tear up the Bears secondary in one of their games. He looked like a legitimate starting NFL quarterback. And when he was coming out of Liberty, he certainly played like that. So we'll see if that actually happens. So he also came in at average positional rank of around 36. Let's break out on the next guy. We have J.J. McCarthy. And you guys may know J.J. McCarthy, near and dear to my heart specifically. J.J. has been a fantastic player to watch crush my dreams over the past couple of years. So he didn't get to play his first season. Last year, he finished real strong, but he started real weak. He had that one stellar game against the Bears and then got benched for Carson Wentz, injury benching. And now he's going at around the last couple picks of the 8th round. And you can get him as late as the 13th round, but he's going as early as the 7th. Now, that's a little bit of a scary range because you're expecting him to be your starter long-term in that case. And that can be a bit of a rough situation to be in because the Vikings have playoff aspirations. So if he doesn't work out this season, then you are probably going to see them looking to bring in competition. They might do it as early as this year. So where's he coming in the quarterback ranks? He's coming in at 33. Now, I think that's great value because you know he's got at least some leash. Whereas Malik Willis, he might end up being benched or not even getting to a starting role by the start of the season. J.J. McCarthy is coming in and likely will have that. So there probably aren't 32 quarterbacks that are a better bet to get points on a regular basis, but he has a high variation. I think these variance players, the one thing that it shows you is that at least someone has faith in these players and thinks that they are actually going to be a stellar player for your fantasy squad. So in those circumstances, I think it's pretty smart to consider taking a risk and taking one of these players early. So that's my thought on JJM. Now, let's move into the next guy here. We have Shedeur Sanders. Average round of 10.3. That's around pick 4 in your 10th round. He's going as late as the 14th, but as early as the 7th. And this doesn't surprise me. Shedeur had a ton of supporters this past season, Chev being one of the prominent ones in our space. And he had some great games, especially against the Tennessee Titans. He really showed a breakout there. But we got to see some of his downturns, like when he played the Chicago Bears. He put up one of the all-time stinkers from this season. Now, He's going at around 35.83. That is around the range I think you should be taking him. Him and Malik Willis really remind me of each other in terms of their potential to start this next season. They should have an opportunity to earn a starting role, and we will see if they actually are able to maintain that. Now, you'll see here, despite him being picked at a standard deviation lower than JJ McCarthy and Malik Willis, he actually has a lot more variance of where he goes in the quarterback ranks. He has standard deviation of 15.38. That is a ton of movement. That means people are probably taking him as high as 22 and as low as 56. That's a little concerning, and we'll see which of those actually ends up being the right spot. So this next guy here really surprised me because Matt Stafford is a potential MVP. I think the biggest reason that we're seeing this variance from him is because Matt Stafford very well might retire this season. And if he is to retire, he will likely go out as one of the best quarterbacks of our generation. I think that he'll be back personally. And I think that if you're getting Matt Stafford at a positional rank of 32 almost, that is almost insane to me because Matt Stafford won you your leagues this year. And he could do it again. There's nothing wrong with taking a 1-year rental. Many people in Dynasty Leagues will know that I am the king of AARP quarterbacks. I am frequently taking guys that are far too old to foster on my Dynasty roster. So we'll see what actually happens with Stafford. But if you're getting Stafford at 32, I don't think that's in any way a bad bet to make. Now, I'll rush through some of the rest of these because I don't want to spend too much of this stream talking about quarterbacks, even though they are really fun to go over. Now, the rest of this board goes Tua, Anthony Richardson, Tyler Shuck, and CJ Stroud. Now, this group is, I think, significantly more in the range of their variances explained by people's takes. Now, Anthony Richardson, for example, I still believe will get an opportunity to start for the Colts going into next season, especially with Daniel Jones' injury coming in pretty late in the year. So if we have him at a maximum pick of 173, an average ranking of 51 in terms of the quarterback position, there isn't really a better shot you can take. A-Rich was a top 12 quarterback in per game scoring in almost every game he played. So A-Rich is a guy I'm going to have in a lot of dynasty startups because I think that there still is an opportunity for him to start in the right offense. Now, Tyler Shuck is kind of on the other end of that board. We're getting into the players that are actually more draftable. So Shuck is going around the 6th round. He goes as early as 3rd, late as the 8th, and he has a pretty high standard deviation between those two rounds. He goes at around pick 60, so late 5th round indeed, and he has gone as early as 28, I think that's Rocco, and as late as 88. So that standard deviation is going to have him moving around the board quite a bit, and his average positional rank is at 22. Now, I think that's pretty low. I don't have him as a top 12 guy. I think he is a competent NFL starter, and the biggest thing we saw last year is him making plays with his legs. So if he can continue to do that, he is going to be a competent fantasy quarterback, and you got to actually consider him for your roster. Let's get into one more, and then we'll break it into the running back position. We have CJ Stroud here. Goes in the 4th round, goes as high as the 3rd, lays the 7th. Average pick of around 48, so right at the end of your 4th round, and he goes as early as the mid-3rd. So he's going a little later than Shuck in general, but they're around the same range, and I think this guy has the same sort of mindset that you might look at with a Tyler Shuck. CJ Stroud hasn't been prolific, but he has ceiling. We've seen him in his rookie year look like a competent top 12 NFL fantasy quarterback and also a top 12 NFL quarterback. But the end of this season was brutal. Those picks in the Patriots game weren't fun, and he had about 5 fumbles in the Steelers games too. So he's going to need to clean that up. But if the O-line steps up a bit for Houston, CJ Stroud might be a buy that you kind of need to take in that late spot because he is a young quarterback and he is great for a dynasty roster. Let's break into running backs. So, running backs, we're going to be going over the guys with the most standard deviation. And the top of this board is Braylon Allen. You may have forgotten about Braylon Allen, the giant running back that plays for the New York Jets. He spelled Breece Hall, and he could be their starter if Breece leaves in free agency. He goes as standard deviation of 4 rounds. So people are taking him as high as 84 and as late as 180. Average pick of around 154, which is about what I'd expect. I might have him a little bit higher in my personal rankings, but that's largely because we saw him able to catch the football at a high rate in his first season with the Jets. Last year, he missed most of the year with a season-ending injury. Now, he has a positional rank deviation of 38.17. Now, that is pretty high. Minimum of 23. Don't know what someone was doing there, but maximum of 100 is pretty low, too. That really makes me think that he could be one of those players that could stand out for you. You get him at the end of your draft, and he ends up being a competent starter. I like Braylon Allen. I think he's a good buy right now. Kenneth Gainwell might be in that same bucket. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with Caleb Johnson, Jaylen Warren, and Kenneth Gainwell after this season. Kenneth Gainwell was by far the best fantasy producer, but he is a perennial backup running back, and the Eagles did not use him very effectively. The Steelers did, but Aaron Rodgers throws the ball to the running back almost more than any quarterback in the NFL. Can we trust Gainwell going into this year? Time will tell, but we have him going anywhere from 100 to 156. That's a huge range. So you might be able to get him late in your draft, and he might come at a huge value because we don't know what the Steelers are going to do at the running back position. He comes in with a standard deviation of around 12, significantly less than these other guys. And that's an interesting part about this, that Gainwell, although he moves all over the board in terms of draft pick, he tends to go around the same running back. So it's really if your draft board is tending RB early or not. And you kind of got to feel that one out. So let's move it into this next guy. Jonathan Brooks, another player you may have forgotten, but the Carolina Panthers are likely to get rid of Rico Dowdle in the offseason, which means that Jonathan Brooks should have an opportunity to play this season. Chuba Hubbard has been a competent NFL starter, but Jonathan Brooks had a better profile coming out of college. So it's possible that he is a really good value there. He's coming in around pick 146 and significantly higher standard deviation. Goes as high as the 25th ranked running back and as low as the 98th. So you might be able to get him late in your draft and he might be a value. Let's move it on to this next one. Ramondre Stevenson. Now, we're going to see Ramondre in the Super Bowl this weekend. So I am intrigued to see how that pans out because Ramondre, if he ends this kind of prolific season with another game out-touching Travion Henderson by 100 carries a game, be hard for me to justify not taking Ramondre at the price tag that we have. We have his average positional rank as 49.5. That is real low. And he goes as high as 38, which is way lower than the rest of these guys. But his max positional ranking is only at 58. So you might be able to get a real deal on Ramondre. These 9th round to 12th round running backs are going to be the guys that swing your league. So I think Ramondre is really the name that doesn't fit in from these top 5. Devin Neal, same boat. We'll see what happens with Alvin Kamara, but we didn't see Devin Neal really shine aside from 1 or 2 games. Now, he looked good for the Gamecocks back in college, and he does have some potential on the right O-line, but we'll see what the Saints do there. Zach Charbonnet, the injury is definitely muddling that conversation, so we'll see what happens there. I don't think there's too much to talk about. Tyrone Tracy and Rico Dowdle are guys that I'm very interested here because Tyrone Tracy is really reliant on Cam Scatterbo coming into the league late. And we'll see if that actually keeps up, because he's been a competent running back every time he's gotten a starting opportunity, aside from last season at the beginning of the year. But he is going as late as RB 68, and he's going around 52. So you can probably get him at the end of your draft, and I doubt they're going to stick with Devin Singletary as the other option there. So he might be the third down back to kind of alleviate some of the wait time when Scadabo is still getting himself up to speed. Rico Dowdle, another guy that we will see where they end up. Jalen Warren, I just did the thing with Kenny Gainwell, copy and paste here. Trey Benson, another injury guy, we will see. Blake Corum came into this season and had nearly no role, and by the end of the year, he was splitting touches 50-50 with Kyren Williams. In the playoffs, that took a hit. Kyren was definitely on the field significantly more than him, but he's going in the 10th round. So for a young running back behind Kyren Williams, who, although he's a good player, is certainly not a world beater, I think that you could do worse with your 30th running back or 43rd on average than Blake Corum. Let's move it into Saquon Barkley, because this is the guy that I wanted to get to in the running back position. We have him going in the 4th round, minimum round of 3rd, latest round of 7, high standard deviation. His max or his average pick is around 45, but his minimum pick is 25 and his latest is 75. If you can't Barkley at 75, that is insane value. Now, you may see here, he has way less variation in positional rank. So I think that this is another case of running backs going down the board early. In early super draft or super flex mock drafts, you're going to see a lot of people feeling out the strategy and figuring out where they actually want to take these guys. Saquon Barkley is one of those guys that when they're on the draft board, it is hard to pass them up, but his average positional rank is 13.7. The Eagles are getting rid of Petula. They brought in Mannion. I think that's great news for Barkley, and I don't think we've seen the end of Barkley being an RB1 in fantasy football. Now, the rest of these guys, I want to skip around, but I'm going to go to Rachaad White because he is one of my sleepers for this season. He's going to be one of my flag plant guys, especially if he ends up in Washington like he says he wants to with Jaden Daniels. He used to play together at Arizona. His average round is around the 13th round. He goes at pick 148. And he has a high standard deviation. So people are taking him as high as RB34, but as late as RB84. And if you're taking him at 58, for example, the 58th RB off the board, there are not 58 more talented running backs than Rachaad White in the NFL. He is one of the athletic freaks in the NFL. He had a top 3 season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers until Bucky Irving ascended. And I am going to have quite a bit of Rachaad White this year. So that handles our running back position. Let's go ahead and break it down on receivers. So receivers are going to have a lot more variation in general. So we have at the top of this board some interesting names. Romeo Doubs, we'll see if he ends up in Green Bay. Troy Franklin, who kind of ascended this past season until Pat Bryant started to break out, but that certainly wasn't a clear-cut ascension, and Marvin Mims still muddles that that wide receiver room. Brandon Ayuk, in whatever uniform he might end up in, Brandon Ayuk was going in around like the 10th round of underdog last year. It might be a great time to get him. Josh Downs, Trey Harris, and Chris Godwin. Now, these are a lot of wide receiver 2s and 3s for their ball clubs, but they all have one thing in common if we're looking at the top of this list. Romeo Doubs has a history of wide receiver 1 or 2 production. Troy Franklin has had weeks of wide receiver 1 or 2 production. Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver 1 season. Josh Downs, breakout season this rookie year. Trey Harris, talented wide receiver out of Ole Miss, and could be thrust into a significantly bigger role if Keenan Allen is to leave the San Diego or Los Angeles Chargers. Chris Godwin, we'll see where the Buccaneers end up with their wide receiver room, but if Mike Evans is gone, Chris Godwin is only 29. He looked healthy at the end of the year. Jalen Coker ended the year on a heater. Cokeheads unite. He was fantastic, and it is hard to believe that Coker won't be a above average talent in the NFL in the right role. Rashid Shaheed, a little bit weaker, and then we get into some of the more wide receiver 2 names. But let's break down where they actually are going. So for these guys, they're basically all going between this meaty range from 125 to 165 on your draft board. So that adds up to around round 11 to round 14. Now, that's a ton of variation. And these guys all seem to have positional rank max out of around 30 and a min of around 100. So you could get them very late in your board. And I think that makes a lot of sense to take a list like this where you have these Juwan Jennings, Shaheed, Godwin, all these guys. Pick your 3 favorite, decide what those guys are, and then pick one from that board and wait until the last one's on there and snipe that guy off. Now, for me, it's going to be Brandon Ayuk. I still believe in the talent. I saw enough from him. Speaking of guys that might end up in a Washington Commanders uniform playing with their former quarterback, Brandon Ayuk and Jaden Daniels had a great history, and I doubt that Deebo Samuel is back in a Commanders uniform. I would love to take Ayuk, especially around the spot that he is going at average pick of 128. I think that he is one of the best values in that spot because 128 is real late for Brandon Ayuk. And if he was fully healthy and you had clarity on his situation, you would be taking him in the 5th round. That's where he was going previously. Now, that brings me to Josh Downs, who is in a very similar position where Michael Pittman very well might leave the Indianapolis Colts. And the biggest fear that you have with Josh Downs isn't that he won't get targets. He will. Tyler Warren and Alec Pierce are great, but he's going to end up with some target share. It's that Anthony Richardson might be his quarterback for 8 weeks. And that does make him a scary prospect, but he's another player that was going in the 9th or 10th round last year, and he's going in the late 10th now. So in a situation where he has a smaller target tree, I'm pretty inclined to think that it's time to buy back in on Josh Downs. Prolific wide receiver his rookie year. Now, let's move into some of these other guys. Chris Godwin, I obviously feel great about because if Mike Evans actually does leave in free agency, Godwin is an easy pickup there. Coker, I gave you my spiel on him. Let's move a little bit further down the board and go into, let's see, who am I feeling here? Michael Wilson. Oh, that's a fun one. Oh, wow. Matt Golden goes around the same spot. That seems like an easy dichotomy right there. But Michael Wilson goes as high as the 5th round, late as the 10th. He is going around the 8.5, so around your 96th, 97th pick. Goes as high as 55, late as 116. And the thing about Michael Wilson is he was a wide receiver 1 for 8 weeks last year. If the Colts roll with Kyler Murray, I don't know that I have any confidence that Michael Wilson can repeat that. He already has a tough target tree with Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison, and Trey Benson, James Conner eating up backfield carries. So we'll see if he actually is able to maintain that, but he has a ton of deviation. So if you could get Michael Wilson later and end up with him closer to the 48th ranked wide receiver than the 30th, I would be thrilled to have Michael Wilson as my wide receiver 3 or 4 on my ball club. But we just got to my favorite name on this board, Tyreek Hill. I've ended up with him in a ton of startups. Really interesting. This guy was a 1st-round pick the past 3 seasons. Last year, maybe he fell to the 2nd or 3rd, but still. He is 31 years old, coming off a terrible knee injury, and he is going an average pick of 141. Now, that's where it kills me because Tyreek Hill almost undoubtedly will not finish as the 141st player in the NFL. When you look at his maximum positional rank of 43 or 104, I think that shows that dichotomy because I think that there isn't really a world where he finishes anywhere other than top 36 or bottom 80 to 110. So he's one of those players where if you're getting him in the late 13th round, if you're getting him in the 12th round, I think he's one of the best bargains you can have because say he ends up in a Chargers uniform or a Raiders uniform with Fernando Mendoza. Tyreek Hill could have a prolific year to end his career, and I'm inclined to take him at that spot. So we'll see how that actually works out. I'm intrigued by Tyreek Hill, and I think that he's one of those players that I am going to be really impressed by based on their play. And hey, Jamie breaking into the chat. Tyreek is 32 years old. Thank you for correcting me there, Jamie. And there is a chance he's done. But at pick 132, I am happy to take a guy that might be done. Last year, we were talking about the same thing with Keenan Allen. And Keenan Allen ended up getting 8 to 9 solid weeks for your fantasy squad. And we were talking about him at about the same range in that late 12 to 15th round, and then he skyrocketed up to the 8th or 9th. When you're looking at these older wide receivers who have ambiguity in their starting role or where they're actually going to end up, they are guys that I'm going to be considering pretty heavily towards the end of that draft board. But fair caveat, I mean, that's why he's going as late as he is. To be honest, it's unlikely that Tyreek Hill ends up at this ADP closer to the season because we're going to have clarity on his outcome. It's either going to be way lower or way higher. So I can break down a couple more of these. I think I have time for one or two more wide receivers in here. And let's see, maybe not Mike Evans. Let's go with Marvin Harrison Jr. because he is still going in the 5th round, min round of 4, max round of 7. He is going at pick 55. Odd. And he goes around the average positional rank of wide receiver 24. Now, this guy I'm going to be lower on. We already saw the asymmetrical downside. Oh, my. Well, we got this joke from Jamie again. We have thought about adding 2 girls in 1 cup, but we found that the search algorithm did not help us much when we did that. But appreciate it, Jamie. So Marvin Harrison is a receiver where we are looking at one of the most talented guys coming out of college, but someone that absolutely has fallen off the map the past few seasons. He's coming off of injury. The problem I have with his early ADP isn't that I think it's unreasonable. I think it's a ceiling outcome. Whereas we talked about the floor outcome with Tyreek Hill, I think the ceiling outcome that we're talking about with Marvin Harrison is wide receiver 13. I don't think he gets much higher than that. If he's at wide receiver 24 on average, I don't think I'll get a lot of him because his ceiling is probably close to that 13, and we saw his floor at around 50 this year. If we're having to take him that early, yeah, you get the extra years of work from him. He's going to be on your team for some time, but he is certainly going to be a guy that I have less of if this current ADP sticks. But let's move it into tight ends. And yeah, 7.8 is closer to acceptable in my mind for Marvin Harrison. And I think that's not bad. See, I think ADP is just so not sticky right now. It's kind of the reason that I made this sheet in the first place. Like, when you're looking at ADP of these players, you're going to end up having a ton of variation going into the season. So it's almost good to look at it like a snapshot. Like, how are people viewing these players now? Because it'll help you get that packet of value where if you're in an underdog draft room, the biggest thing you want right now is to find the guys that have that asymmetrical upside, and you want to avoid the guys that have that asymmetrical downside, and essentially stack up your draft that way, because they're going to move around. And if you can adjust your rosters to essentially have a high variance of the players that are on your team, then you can really make a lot of money in the underdog best ball streets. And I'm going to keep letting Jamie clog up the stream here because I like his comments. I was going to take Marv at 605, but Doomsday was there and felt lucky. I mean, to be honest, I'd take a Doomsday before Marv anytime. I actually think a Doomsday is a more talented player, personally. That Matt Harmon reception perception on him was legit, and he plays up to it on a regular basis. But Marv's an interesting player. I'm going to end up with less of him if this ADP sticks, and I think it's going to drop, and I'm going to end up picking up that value midway through the offseason. But let's break into tight ends. Let's just thrust right into the tight end. Phrasing myself there. So Juwan Johnson, highest variation. I love that, because Juwan Johnson is about the highest variation player in terms of actual NFL talent when on the field, because he sometimes looks like the best tight end in the NFL, and he sometimes looks like the worst. So this makes sense to me. He has a positional rank deviation of around 13.89, pretty high, and he goes as early as 13 and as late as 42, and I couldn't agree more. I have no clue what to do with Juwan Johnson. I mean, I love to come with some takes on this, but to be honest with Juwan, I really don't know what to do with him. The Saints might add talent in that room, and they might not, because he looked fine at times. But if he goes back to that mid-tier role, or if for whatever reason Taysom Hill decides to come back out of retirement for them, he could end up being a bust. I don't really know what to do with him. Dave Njoku is another one where we're going to get a lot more clarity based on the landing spot that he ends up in this offseason. He's going in the 11th round. He has a maximum pick of 165. He goes around 133. And I think that the fact that his deviation in terms of rank is so low shows you that people know what Dave Njoku is. He is a bona fide talent at this point. We know what his output is likely to be, but we don't know where he'll end up, and that's going to shape that. I could see him being closer to that 22 mark. I could see him being closer to that 30 mark, depending on if he ends up in a system like the Cowboys or if he ends up in a system back like the Browns. Next one here is Brenton Strange. Now, Brenton Strange, it blows my mind that the maximum positional rank for him is 36 and the minimum is 9. Because what in the world do we need to see from Strange before we start believing our eyes? He's been fantastic. He goes in around the 9th round. I think that he is a steal there. The fact that he's going later means that he should be your sleeper pick in these drafts. And the fact that some people are devaluing him all the way to 36, he is a young tight end. He is a talented one. He comps to Kenyon Sadiq in this draft class. So if you're looking for the talent that guy's bringing, Brenton Strange already has that. And you can get him all the way in the 9th round. So go ahead and take a look at him there. And let's see what Jamie has. Hey, he's always pounding those tight ends. That's great to hear, Jamie. I'm happy for you, bud. I'm trying my best to too, but depends on the mood my wife's in. So let's move it to Dallas Goedert here. We have Dallas Goedert at average round 12. I think this one kind of makes sense. I think he's a little late because, yeah, if A.J. Brown leaves, there is some asymmetrical upside. So I might have a little bit of an overweight profile on Dallas Goedert, but we'll see. It's early to tell, and I think that especially what I heard at the Senior Bowl from a lot of the Eagles reporters was that they are expecting A.J. Brown to stay there. Now, I've heard trade rumors come up, but we'll see what actually happens, because I think Dallas Goedert, if the team stays in its current composition, could have some downside. He's definitely been inconsistent, and at the tight end position, that can really kill you. But if you're looking at the potential positive returns from him, if A.J. Brown leaves, he's arguably the number 2 receiver there, if not Saquon Barkley. So we'll see. Harold Fannon's another guy that I would love to talk about here. Minimum round of 2, max round of 7. I got Harold Fannin in the 7th, and I felt fantastic in a startup that I did with Ballsville. Um, you know, the average pick you get him at is 55. That's around the 5th round, and I think that's about where he should be going. If you can get him at 81, that's fantastic. But you can see here that his standard deviation positional rank doesn't vary much. It's mostly the draft board that's moving him around. And I think this context is important because it shows the guys that are going to go during an early tight end run, because that's really what you need to know. When you see that early wide receiver, that early running back run, that quarterback run, believe it and know the players that are going to fall in and out of that range, because these guys, the Jawan Jennings, David Njoku's, Brendan Strange, and Dallas Goedert's, they're going to move around a lot more. Njoku may be less so than the other two guys, but those guys have standard deviation of positional rank of over 10, so they're going to move around a lot, whereas Harold Fannin is at 1.5. One of these things is not like the other, and the big reason for that is because Harold Fannin is good, and he might have that tight end opportunity to himself this year. Now, we have A.J. Barner and Terrence Ferguson here. A lot of variants for different reasons. Barner, because we might see Arroyo break out. Ferguson, because we might see Ferguson break out. Don't know really what I'm going to do with these guys early, but I think them and Theo Johnson all represent an upside case for late in your draft. Now, I want to move it to a guy a little bit further down at Sam Laporta, because Sam Laporta gave us a tight end one season pretty damn recently, and he is going in the 5th round. He's still extremely young. He might be still injured. He's coming off that injury, but he goes as early as the 3rd, as late as the 8th, and his variation is quite high in terms of picks. Now, he only has a 3.5 positional rank variation, so he'll probably go during one of your runs, but that's still a lot higher than Fannin at 1.5. So when you see one of those runs and you're trying to get yourself a starter, Sam Laporta might be the guy to go to. That largely breaks down what I'm going to cover on this show. There are plenty of other guys I could go over. I highly encourage you to look over this sheet. I'm going to be adding to it throughout the entire offseason. We'll have it in the app. We're adding our ADP and everything else, going through some of that. But I see there are a couple comments here. So, screw it. Why not? I know Goddard's a free agent. I think he's ending up in Philly, but I might be wrong there. I don't like Philly's odds with Grant Calcaterra. Now they could go for Sadiq or Stowers, but we'll see. And Fannin I love as Jamie's most owned tight end dynasty. And we want more glare. Mike, that's real nice. So, let me see if I can get more glare in here. This is Addison reporting from the surface of the sun. Terrence Ferguson, we had the tight end touchdown call from Scott. We are big Ferg fans here. And a what up to Dynasty Dogs. Be sure to check out Dynasty Dogs podcast. Love those guys. They put together a fantastic show. That is all I have for you guys today. Be sure to check out that spreadsheet. I'm keeping it short. I'm keeping it sweet today. I mostly wanted to get the content out there so that you guys knew how to work with this data. I'm a big fan of putting those resources out there. So if you guys wonder about other sleeper metrics that I can put together, I would be happy to do them. And I wish you guys the best of luck in your Superflex drafting this season. If you have mock drafts and you want to contribute to ours, just shoot them over to me. Can handle everything from the link. But I have been Addi, the Nard Dog Narder. You can find all my socials at Duck League Champ. Follow the Two Guys show or One Pod show. Like, subscribe. Also look up Two Girls, One Cup, but KUPP. And be sure to check out the League Champ app on the Google Play and App Store. It has been a blast being here. Thank you guys on the stream, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.